Today's November 19th. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're at the home of Fritz Hintze and his wife Leda over in Forest Hill Road here in Prince George's County, Hyattsville. And the purpose of the meeting today is to pick Fritz's brains with respect to the history of the German orphan home. Now, with us today, handling the camera, is Pete Schwenk, who is president of the orphan home, Harry Krimmelmeyer, past president of the orphan home, current board member, Marge Curry, the executive director of the German orphan home, Fritz Hintze, who is the treasurer of the German orphan home, and his wife Leda. And my name is Bill Caldwell. I'm also a director of the board orphan home and chairman of the history committee. We'll try to, as I said, pick Fritz's brains to maybe fill in some of the void of the past history and ultimately enrich our knowledge of the German orphan home. Fritz, you've told me several times in the past the story of your life and how you got to the German orphan home. You actually began where you were born. I didn't realize that you had been born in Germany, and how you got over here and how that developed. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Well, my father was a musician, and he and my mother and my sister and myself came over by boat on January 1925. He came to play with the National Symphony Orchestra here in the United States so he could make $10,000 and then go back to Germany and live high on the hog. Well, it didn't happen. He had put all his money in the stock market. When the stock the National Symphony Orchestra had to disband because they couldn't afford to do the traveling. So he got a job as a musician in the old Fox Theater on F Street in Washington, D.C., where he played the saxophone, yeah. And he developed what do you call it?
Acute appendicitis.
Acute appendicitis, and wouldn't go to the doctor until it was too late, and of course it killed him in 1933. And of course my mother, never having worked, she couldn't take care of us. And the one of the, I guess it was the director or somebody in the National Symphony Orchestra, contacted Mr. Zimmerman on the board and arranged for us to
the board of the German orphan home?
Yeah, board of the German orphan home, and arranged for us to live in the orphan home. So that's how we got there. My sister, myself, and my younger brother, who's 5 years younger than I am, and I'm 75 now. So
how was your sister?
And she's 74. She's a year younger than I am.
And what year did you?
1933, just before my birthday, 12th birthday. I can't remember the exact day. It was a day of infamy or something, you know. And it was wasn't very pleasant, but there were like 50 kids at the home at that time, and about half and half girls and boys. And that night, as they assigned me a bed in the dormitory, and immediately they picked another guy, and he and I had to fight. I don't know why, but I wasn't in no fighting mood anyway. But anyway, it was a draw, so nothing happened. Nobody got hurt, thank goodness. And at that time, this Mr. Hoffman was the superintendent. His wife had been killed, I think, the year before on Good Hope Road. Some car ran into her. She was walking up the road. So I don't really remember a whole lot about the first year that he was there. Being only 12 years old, I didn't pay much attention to what we were supposed to be doing.
Fritz, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Can we back up just a second? You said you came over from, where were you born in Germany?
Oh, I was born in Hamburg. Hamburg, Germany in 1921, April the 9th.
Okay. When you came over, you spoke no English, I assume?
No, we came over on the boat, and I remember the boat ride. It was, of course, I was almost 4 years old, I guess. And we came to New York. I think we lived there a year. And my mother told me afterwards, she said, I would go out on the street and all the kids would make fun of me because I couldn't speak English. I'd come home crying, and you know. So then we moved to Pennsylvania, Norwood, Pennsylvania. I think it is now a suburb of Philadelphia. At that time, I think it was a little bit further away, but Philadelphia increased, I guess. Then we lived there a year, and then we came to Washington, D.C. and lived down on 4th and E Street Northwest, which is the apartment house we lived in is no longer there. And then we moved to 15th and East Capitol Street, southeast side. And that's where my father passed away at that time. And that's where we left to come into the home.
Fritz, were your parents members of the Concordia Church? Is that how they...
I don't know that she was Lutheran. I don't know that she was a member of any church, to be honest with you. And because my father was gone all the time, practically, because the orchestra naturally traveled all around the United States all the time. They didn't stay in one place very long. So I really never saw him very much. But I do remember living in Norwood, which was, we had a great big house, an old house with a huge yard, and apple trees in the back, and a great vineyard, and grapevines and the whole kind of stuff. I enjoyed living there at the time because I was kind of little. But
Fritz,
go ahead.
Fritz, did your mother, do you remember how your mother told you that you were going to be put into the home? And did you have a chance to visit at all, or were you just taken there?
We just got told we were going and packed a few clothes we had and arrived at the home. Mm. No advance notice that I can remember at all. Yeah. Mm. I just remember coming up the front. That's the old home, up the front porch, and the doors were where it seemed like awful big to me, what am I heading for?
It must have been a very frightening
Yeah, it was kind of, yeah.
Little trivia, what instrument did your father play?
He played the bassoon, in the orchestra.
Did you get any musical talent from him?
I got none. My brother, he got some musical talent. He played, I don't know what it was, one of the wind instruments. And my daughter, she's kind of artistic, and my sister was artistic. But I got none. I was behind the door when that was passed out. I missed it. But I did. But the ladies at the home, they decided that they were going to give the students who were interested in music lessons. And we had, Fritz Hart. I don't know if you know him. By the way, when I came into the home, my name being Fritz, and why he was called Fritz, I don't know. But anyway, they said, well, we can't have two Fritzes, so you're Fred. So everybody knows me from the home as Fred. But his name was really Fred, and my name was really Fritz, and they just turned it around. But anyway, Fritz Hart, they bought him a guitar, steel guitar, and bought me a mandolin, and there was a couple other instruments. I can't remember what they were. And some music teacher came up and he gave us music lessons, and on the May Day thing we'd get out there and we'd have a little orchestra playing on my mandolin. As I say, I had no talent for music as such. I mean, I could play from notes and I could memorize, but no real talent. But as soon as the mandolin broke one time, that was the end of that. So.
So you were 12 when you got into the home in 33.
I think it was about 3-4 days before my birthday.
Well, before your
Yeah, so I was
birthday.
12
Okay.
years old. Yeah.
At that age, what were your responsibilities at the home? What was the home like? And I guess that's a better question.
When Hoffman was there, of course, the younger kids like myself, I don't think we had much in the way of responsibilities. The older kids, they had to do most of the work. But when Hoffman got kicked out finally, because he beat on one of the guys a little bit, one of the boys too much, so Philip Gerber, by the way. Philip and I were two guys that kind of were always into something. But anyway, then Tapey and his wife came in, Mr. and Mrs. Tapey, and they organized everything, and then we were assigned all kinds of different duties. And you know, one of the things that I was assigned to the barn out there where the cows and the horses and so forth, and I had to learn how to milk cows and feed the chickens. And but every Saturday, I think we were, it was about 6 of us, we had to clean out the chicken house. We had a lot of chickens, of course a lot of eggs. I think we ate real well myself at the home. I always look back on it and I can't remember really not enjoying the food, except the way they cooked the fish. They would throw the fish in a pot of boiling water, and it was terrible.
You all, down on Good Hope Road, you all did a lot of farming in the sense of growing some vegetables, right, and canning them, and
well, I don't know what the canning
chickens
was done, but we raised a lot of potatoes and corn and soybeans, for the feed for the alfalfa feed for the cows and the horses. And we had a horse-drawn wagon that we used to pitch the hay on and bring it into the barn and put it into the barn for the winter months. But I milked 2 cows like every morning and every evening, and helped clean out the stable, and you go to school with a little stuff on your shoes sometimes. Everybody knew I was coming. But we had a lot of fun, and we had to cut the grass, and we had to take turns churning they take the cream off the top of the milk and make butter out of it. And we had it was a pretty big churn, it was hard to turn after a while, but we had a couple of guys who would turn that all the time. So we had plenty of milk, plenty of butter, and when Tapey got there, that's when I start remembering about what we were doing. Every Saturday morning, let's see, Philip and Carl Gerber were brothers. Philip and Carl and myself, we went with Tapey to the bakeries. We made about 3 different bakeries and picked up their day-old stuff and moldy stuff and whatever they had, And we'd sit back, and it was a closed-in panel truck. It was loaded. We'd sit back there and we'd dig through the stuff and find something that wasn't so moldy, or if it was a little moldy, we'd take that off and eat the cakes and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff, of course, went to the hogs, the pigs. And then, as I recall, nobody did the maintenance around the home. There was no maintenance man to fix things, So one day, Tapey called on every, asked the different boys, we got to fix these screens. They're getting full of holes and things like that. And some of the windows, you had the old cord sash type windows. And some of the cords were broken, and nobody would volunteer. So I said, what does this entail, He said, well, you stay in the house and the other guys will go out and work. I said, that's my job. I had no idea, I said, well, I guess I'll need a hammer and a screwdriver and maybe a pair of pliers or something. So I got that, and I took this, huge screens, those great big screens on those big windows. And I took the screen down and put it on the floor in the hallway, or in the porch rather, right outside the hallway. And I said, how does this work? I just learned how to do it all by myself. Fixed a lot of screens, and when I got to the window, I had no idea how you fix a window sash cord. It took a while to figure it out, but I got it figured out, and I replaced those. And the guys were out there sweating, cutting grass. Well, I got cutting grass too, but not as often as they did. So that job helped me a little bit, and I learned a little bit more about, maintenance type work. Didn't have to do any plumbing, but.
What period of time did that cover?
That was, let's see, 34, 35. I don't know, it's a couple years in there, about 3 years in there. I was in the home about 6 years.
Did you sleep dormitory style?
Dormitory. We had about 25 kids in dormitory. And I was also assigned another job, and that was every morning we had to move the bed, two of us, Carl Gerber and myself. He had one side and I had the other side. We'd move the beds all back, and you'd take wet sawdust and spread it on the floor, and you'd sweep, and then you move the beds back one at a time. Did that every morning. We got up about 5:30 earlier. And on Saturday we had to do the same thing, except we had to use water and soap and mop and scrub the floor. It was hardwood floors. And some of the other boys had a job of cleaning the, I guess there's a linoleum on the hallways down on the first floor and keeping them waxed real good, Everybody had some jobs to do. And,
was the house divided? In other words, the girls were on one
side of the house and the boys on the other side. And there's a long hallway in between. If you remember the old home, on the second floor, their dormitory was on the front side of the house, and our dormitory was on the back side.
I understand there were some secret passages between the two places.
Well, there was, in the older homes, you had a front stairway and you had a back stairway. And the back stairway, you'd go down, you'd sneak out your dormitory. Of course, the Tapeys their bedroom was in between the two dormitories, but they were asleep, We had to go to bed at 9 o'clock. And so we'd sneak down the steps and go down the hall and come up the other side of the steps. And we'd meet with a couple of girls and just kind of fool around a little bit. No real improprieties, you might say. And in the summertime, we didn't have any air conditioning, of course, and no fans. We had no fans of any kind. And some of the girls would come out there's a little front porch on the second floor. And we'd go up there and talk a little bit, I guess you might say.
And these were some of the girls that you stayed involved, you've known, and you've visited with.
Oh yeah.
Give us some names of
Well, one of the Kusler girls.
the Kusler girls.
Yeah, and I can't really remember the other girls' names that were involved. It's been a long time. Also, it's so hot in the summertime, they let us go out and sleep on the lawn. So we'd get some cardboard boxes and open them up and lay on the cardboard. not even thinking about all these mosquitoes flying around or whatever, and pay no attention to them, I guess. They never seem to bother me very much. They still don't do today, they don't bother me. But, trying to think of some of the other things. Oh, Philip and I, as I say, he and I were two guys that always seemed to get into things and do things. There was a wild cherry tree between our home and the Rupert home, along the road that goes into the Rupert home. And we'd go up there when they were ripe, and we'd pick a lot of cherries off of there, put them in a gallon glass jar, and put some water in with them, and sneak some sugar out of the kitchen.
Oh.
And the barn had a ventilation tower up there, you know, and we'd climb up there and we'd put it up, let it ferment up there because they couldn't smell it anywhere. And Philip and I made, you make about a half a gallon of wine out of it, cherry wine. And after we got it made, we'd hide it up in the barn in the hay up there. And every once in a while we'd go up and have a little sip. We wouldn't drink very much because we don't drink it, then it would be all gone. So we'd just take a sip, you know. And while Hoffman was, just going back a little bit, while Hoffman was still there, Carl Edlin was one of the boys. They're older than I, and a fellow named Buck Starrett. He went into the Navy, but he, Carl and Buck and a couple of the other older boys, they would go across the road, Good Hope Road on the other side, and dam up a creek that flowed through down over there in the woods, and make a little swimming hole out of it. And as soon as Hoffman would leave, he had a girlfriend he went to see. We knew it. So as soon as he left, a bunch of us go over and go swimming in the swimming hole. And I recall one time when we were over there, a couple of the black boys came in and they wanted to chase us away. And Carl Edlin, I don't know where he got this knife from. He says, "Come on." We had a little round around, but they left real soon. Because Carl was tough, you know, he was a pretty big boy. And we ran up Good Hope Road when Hoffman would leave, and we'd just go out, you know, wandering around. And there was another place where we went where somebody had tied a large rope way up in a tree and hung it down, and you'd get on the bank and you'd swing back and forth, and we'd go over there and do those kind of things. Not knowing you could fall off and get yourself killed, but mainly that's about all I remember about Hoffman, really, is when he went to see his girlfriend.
Who was in charge of the home when Hoffman left? It was just
well,
Hintze
Tapey came in right after that.
No, I mean when Hoffman left to see his girlfriend.
Oh, nobody really.
Okay.
It's nice to know that adolescents.
Very thin staff.
Yeah, it was very thin staff at that time, but
Adolescents have been the same since
I'm
the beginning of time,
yeah.
right?
we used to do pillow fighting up in the bedroom, and one time Phil and I were up there beating each other with pillows, and Hoffman came in and caught us, and he had a rolled up magazine in his hand because he was kind of, you know, a heavy set fat guy. So he went down the aisle to catch us. We were all the way down the other end, and we ran up on the beds on both sides so he could catch us. And we went out the bedroom door, and on the way out, I called him Old Big Black Bear. He says, "I'll catch you. You can't go but so far." By the time I got down to the basement, he was still after me. I said, well, I might as well let him catch me now. He whacked me a few times, but you know, it didn't hurt bad. And he would make us stand in a corner a couple of times when we got into a little trouble. And you stand in a corner with your face there and stand there and stand. He'd forget all about it, you know. So Phil and I would go to his room and tell him how sorry we were and about what we he said, "Okay, let us go." No, Tapey was really a fair guy. You know, he was a minister. He preached at the church that we went to, up on 13th and Monroe, First Reformed Church. We'd get up every Sunday. We got on the streetcars and went to the church up there. And on Sunday afternoon, some of the Sunday school teachers would come to the home, and we had Sunday school at the home on Sundays. And things I can't remember.
Did the streetcars go right into Anacostia at that time?
I believe they did, down across the bridge there.
Across the Anacostia
Yeah.
bridge.
I believe that's where they went.
Mm-hmm.
Fritz, what was the schooling regimen like?
Well, you went to public schools. There was the grade school down in Anacostia that I went to. And then when I got through there, I went to Eastern High School 2 years. And the home would give us bus tickets. Tapey gave us a little book of tickets. And I think it was like 20 tickets in or something, I don't know, worth a
Little
lot.
paper tickets, I think
Yeah.
it cost 3 cents a piece.
3 cents a piece,
Yeah.
right. 3 cents a piece. Well, of course, you know, my mother didn't have any money, and she'd come up once in a while, maybe give me a nickel, but so I figured out, I kept track of the school tickets, of how many I'm supposed to be using each day, you know, like 2 a day, 1 there and 1 back. And I wouldn't use the tickets, I'd walk instead. So when time come to get new tickets, I get my dollar and to buy the tickets and stick it in my pocket, because I still had the other original book of tickets. So
walking.
yeah, well, you know, it seems like it's a long ways if you go over there now from Anacostia and to Eastern High School. It's a long ways, but it didn't seem long to me, because you had to walk across the bridge and all the way up 17th Street, I guess it was, at that time. And so I stayed there 2 years, and then that's when they built the Anacostia High School. So we transferred down there, and of course that ended my tickets.
I thought you said that was that Eastern High School you went to?
Eastern High School for the first 2 years.
Oh, okay, and then Anacostia.
And then Anacostia, and of course we walked to Anacostia High School all the time. That wasn't that far.
Fritz, where did your mother live while you boys were,
Well,
girl or sister were?
She, later, after a couple of years, I don't know how she ran into this guy, but he was a railroad guy who worked in the railroad yards down there, and they got married and went out and lived out there in the country in some little old shack. And the heck was his name? Mac something. Can't think of his name now. But she didn't really have, you know, any money to really give me. And the Ladies' Aid Society, they'd come up, you know, like on May Day and Labor Day things, and one of the ladies, Mrs. Vonderheit was her name. I don't know why she took a liking to me, but every time they'd come up, she'd call me over there and give me $1, you know. And I found out later, after I got out of the home and all, that she was kind of a shy lady, you know, and she lived by herself in the hotel up there on Connecticut Avenue. Evidently it was worth quite a bit of money. She wanted to send me to college, but she wouldn't tell me. And they wouldn't ask me, you know, if I wanted to go to college. And I didn't find this out until after I left the home, and Lita and I would go up and visit her once in a while, and she came out and told my wife that one day. I told Lita that. So I missed a good college education.
Where did you meet Lita?
Well, when I graduated from Anacostia, of course, then you're supposed to leave home, but I had nowhere to go. So they let me stay about a month, I guess, and let me stay in the little room next to the dormitory there by myself. And Mr. Zimmerman said he was going to try to get me a job. And to meet him on F Street, it was 14th, I think it was 14th and F, yeah. So I met him on 14th and F on the corner, and it was, must have been February. It was cold as heck, and all I had was an old suit coat. You know, I didn't have any overcoat or anything. And he says, "Where's your coat?" I said, "What coat?" I said, "I don't own any coat." He took me right into Grossner's right there and bought me an overcoat, a big heavy overcoat. And we went around to the Metropolitan Bank there, and Chris Jacobson was, I guess, I don't know whether he was ever on the board or what, or just a good friend of Zimmerman's. But he took me in there and they gave me a job in the bank. And, you know, I was starting off as a bank runner. You know, you run around the banks taking different canceled checks around. And since after I got out of the home, one of the fellows that worked in the bank said he and his wife and his mother-in-law lived in Georgetown, and they had a room there that they rent out, and asked me if I wanted to stay with them. I said, fine. So I lived with them, and for dinner time, I'd always go to, most of the time, S&W Cafe, which is right there at 15th and New York Avenue, and that's where she was working. I come down the line, and you know, of course, I only had 50 cents to pay for dinner, and they'd give you a little of this and a little of that, and you go to it. And I had to start talking to all the girls on the line, so they'd give me a bigger portions. And Lottie Remmers was on the cashier, and so I had to get to know her. And she still lives over here in College Park. We're very good friends. And Lottie would say, "Well, what do you got there, triple or double portions?" I said, "Lottie, this is only single portions." And that's where I met her. It was in the S&W on the line there. So we started going out and dating, and she could eat at the S&W. My eye keeps watering. She could eat S&W, and instead of doing that, she said, "Well, let's stop at the Chicken and Basket on Connecticut Avenue and have some chicken on our way home," because I would take her home when she lived out there near Chevy Chase Circle with, what's it, get the lady's name out there?
Isabel Harriet.
You know, Harriet's, yeah. So then I worked in the bank for 3 years, and we decided we were going to get married. And that's when the war broke out, you know, the Pearl Harbor thing. And so I told Lena, she had a good job down in Durham, North Carolina, working in a cigarette factory. And she was just up here on times when they were not working, vacation times, month off.
They had a type of arrangement with the Lucky Strike cigarette company that you would be laid off or rehired according to your employment date. And I was on the list to be let go, except they wanted to send me to New York to the World's Fair. And I missed that by just a couple of people that were in front of me. So at that point, I was off of the list, and I only stayed for a short time here. And then they wanted me to come back. So I went back, and that was when Gritz quit the bank and went down to North Carolina.
Yeah, I figured that I'd be going into the service real quick, you know, and I said, well, no use you coming up here and live, then I'll be going. So I went into Chris Jacobson's office and told him I was getting married, and he congratulated me on that, of course. And then I said, I have to leave. I gave him all the good reasons, but he didn't buy it. He was mad. Oh, he was so mad about it. He didn't want me to leave, you know. I said, well, I'm sorry, but I have to go. So we went down to North Carolina and we got married, and I tried to find a job down in Durham and walked all over town because I didn't have a car. I had to sell it to get $90 so we'd have some money to pay the bills.
So you had a car when you were working at the bank?
Yeah, I bought a car in 1952? No, what was it? 1942. Yeah. road, Plymouth coupe with a rumble seat on the back. And sold that and bought another car, Plymouth. I think that's the one I had when I got rid of that. I'm not sure. Anyway, I got $90 for it, and that's what I went to Durham with. And trying to find a job in Durham was hard because nobody wanted to hire me. I said, well, you're going to be leaving next week probably. Went down and registered at the draft board, and they said, well, they'd let me know real quick because I was naturally been married, so they put me in 3A immediately, and then they said they'd reclassify me shortly. Well, I didn't hear from them. And shoot, 9 months went by and I didn't hear from them. So the Camp Butner was close by, and Durham was full of Army soldiers walking around, and they're looking at me, and wondering why I wasn't in service. So I went down to the draft board, and they couldn't find my file. It took them about 2 or 3 weeks to find it. They had filed it in the dead file, where they keep track of the people who register with the draft board there, and if they get killed in action, they put them in a separate file. And that's for my file. Well, I was already killed in action. They hadn't even got into service yet. But anyway, getting back a little bit, trying to find a job, I went down to one of the employment office there, and the lady says, well, why don't you go down to Armor Star there, that branch office there, and they need somebody because they've lost a couple of guys. So I went down there, and Mr. Moore was the manager, and yeah, he said, we need somebody desperately. He says, what can you do? I said, what do you need? He said, well, I says, I can type, I can take shorthand dictation, I can do some stuff. I said, you want me to hang my coat? About 20 letters or something right off the bat, and got them out and typed them up, and he was happy as a lark.
How'd you learn how to type? I mean,
I
shorthand?
took shorthand in high school.
They offered that.
2 years. I still got the certificates. I had 120 words a minute, and you have to type them, of course. And I have 60 words a minute typing.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I could have got a scholarship for
Still a good typist.
going to, I think something had to do with court reporting or something like that for some school, but I didn't take it. I didn't have any money to go anyway. So then I went into service from there. When they tried to draft me, I went over and joined the Marine Corps instead. Well, it could have turned out, I guess it was a smart thing to do, because I went down to Paris Island, and then they found out somehow that I worked in the bank, and they sent me up to the paymaster school after boot camp, and sent me up to Quantico, and I was in the paymaster department for, how long was I there? About a year, I guess.
Until you went over.
Yeah, until they decided I was the last guy on the base there that hadn't been overseas, and she was getting ready to have Don, and they kept putting it off until just couldn't put it off any longer, and she just wouldn't conceive having the kid ready, you know. So I had to leave finally, and they tried to reach me when you went back in the hospital. I was already up at the train station in Washington. It was 8 of us that by ourselves and going to San Francisco on the train. And for some reason they said they called up there, and for some reason I didn't hear them, or we were already on the train, or whatever it was. They tried to get me to come back. So I was in San Francisco when Don was born. I guess that was when it was. And go ahead.
I'd like to back you up just a little bit. When it was interesting when you told me when you finished high school you had to leave the home within a month. How many other of your friends or little girls and boys who were in the same situation, what did they do? How was that handled?
I don't know. they just left. That's all I know.
I mean, the home
I
just
don't know how
said,
they handled it.
said goodbye, and that was what they...
Well, I suspect that the, Zimmerman and the board of directors tried to help them get a job or whatever, and make sure that they had somewhere to go. But most of the kids, had a father or mother, and probably that was some help too there. For example, I don't know where Carl Edlin went, for example, or some of the other guys, but I know that Buck Sterrett, he was about the same age as Carl, I believe. I think he just joined the Navy right away when he got out.
Yeah. I think that was the rule until the Christmas came.
Yeah.
And then the kids used to come back and they used to stay there afterward. But when the Christmas left and other people came to the home, the kids had to leave when they graduated also. It was like, you've graduated, you're out the door the next day. Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel maybe it was you who told me or someone that in the whole existence of the orphan home, there was only 1 or 2 orphans, actually.
Oh, I think there were probably none.
None.
There were really none who everybody had at least a mother
Had
or
a
father.
mother or father.
Right.
I don't really recall any of them not having either, unless it was some of the older boys or girls that were there. And
You got married, and I'd asked you earlier about with respect to your mother. She remarried, and did you drift apart from her, or did she die? or what?
No. I'd go down to on weekends mostly. Go down to see her and visit with her, and she was a great chess player, and she would teach me how to play chess, and I'd try to beat her, but I couldn't beat her. But no, and then they left from down there and went to North Beach and bought a little house in North Beach, and while they were living there, that's when he died, and then she was there by herself, and she contracted cancer, and passed away down in Virginia. I mean, in southern Maryland, there. Prince
What
Prince
happened
Frederick.
to your brother and sister?
Well, I have
Excuse me.
no remembrance of where my sister went when she graduated. She and I were not close. We never were close, really. When we were growing up as little kids, I was always out on the street. I don't know where she was, and hardly even remember her, to tell you the truth. And because I used to go up to 9th Street on the, that was when they had all those different theaters up on 9th Street, before they had the talkies. It was all silent films. And I used to sneak in the back door of the theater to watch the westerns, like old Tom Mix and Tom Steele and those characters and the Indians and cowboys things. So I don't really have much remembrance of what she was doing. And at the home, well, we just weren't close. I was busy with the boys and she was busy with the girls, I guess. But my younger brother, she was always admonishing him for something, and she would try to send him to bed. And he'd come to me and say, tell me what Gertie was doing to him, and I'd tell him, well, you don't pay any attention to that, I'll tell her. I went down and said, Gertie, I said, you're not his mother, so you leave him alone. That was just one of the things. But so when she left, I have no idea what she did. I don't know what she did, really, to tell you the truth.
Was that typical of the kids there, or did they have brothers or sisters also? Were you
most of them did have brothers and sisters. Yeah. See, like there was in the Gerbers, there was 3 boys. There was the Harts, there was Teresa and Elizabeth and Fritz, Fred, or whatever his name is, and their older sister Catherine had already left the home, and there was a girl by the name of Lillian Ott and Raymond Ott, and they were older than I. And, I think she got into a lot of trouble after she left the home. I mean, he was kind of a nutty character anyway himself. He probably wound up being a homosexual, but I really don't know. The only one boy that I can remember was, let me see if I can remember his name. I had it written down here somewhere. Warren. His name was Warren. Yeah. Fritz and I and Warren, we used to like climb up this huge oak tree up in the yard, and we'd climb all the way up the top. And Warren was a kind of a nutty character, and he said, "Watch me, Superman." He'd jump from one branch to the other, you know. And we were at the top, and I said, "You better not do that. That branch is not very strong." He jumped across the branch, just broke right on down with it. He fell down, and Gritz and I almost beat him down to the ground, you know, climbing down the trunk of the tree, because he'd keep hitting all these branches on the way down, and bang. And he finally got on the ground, and all he got was a concussion. That's all. And of course, in a few weeks he was all right. But which reminds me, one time we were practicing pole vaulting. You know, we got this long pole, and I was doing one of the runs, and the darn pole slipped and hit me on the back of the head, knocked me out. It's the only time I've ever been knocked out. And they carried me in the house, I guess, because they told me about it afterwards. And then they said I seemed to be all right. So it says that night, some of the fellows were saying I was trying to give them everything I had, you know, give everything away. And I had no remembrance at all about it. And next morning, Mr. Tapey came over and said, "Well, how you feeling this morning?" I said, "Oh, fine. Why?" I had no remembrance of it, and then they told me about it, you know.
Now, Fritz, you had two brothers. You had, or
Yeah.
had.
Now, when I left the home, my youngest brother, Richard, he was too little to come into the home, so they let him into the home when he got a little bit older, and that was after I had left. And he was the one that got drowned while he was in the home. He was 15 at the time. And of course, Bill, my other brother, I don't know what he did when he left the home. I guess where the heck was I? I don't even remember where I was, to tell you the truth. We were busy, I guess.
I think he was in the Army, because I recall...
Yeah, he got into a program where they sent him to school.
Mm-hmm.
Up in Mass, he went to MIT, is it Massachusetts Tech? And then he went to Virginia Tech, and he got an engineering degree, and then electrical engineering degree, and then he decided to go to George Washington University and got a law degree. He did pretty good for himself. He's up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania now.
Didn't he come to the reunion?
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And he actually, he calls himself by a different it's not a different last name, but the emphasis is different, isn't it? It's not.
Says Hintze.
Does he say Hintze?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He just leaves an E off, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I think so.
They don't like to leave, like our son Don, he leaves the E off also.
It's dangerous.
When did you
If he had insurance
stop being
policies.
known as Fred and become Fritz again?
Well, it took quite a while after I left the home, except for people who were not acquainted with the home. Of course, I was known as Fritz, but we had.
But it's kind of unusual because I grew up a little later than you, but at that time, in the Pittsburgh area, there was always sort of an aversion to having connections with overseas or so-called foreign things, and Fritz obviously being a foreign name and a German name.
Yeah.
I know a lot of Fritzes who changed their names to Fred, and like Manfred Bart, even to this day, he calls himself Fred. And
No, I never changed my name.
yeah.
I didn't like that idea, and I didn't like them calling me Fred, to be honest with you. And a lot of times I wouldn't even answer to her because I didn't think it was my name. But there was a lot of things that we did at the home. You know, they had the various festivals that, for example, in February they'd kill those 2 hogs we were feeding and got them great, nice and fat. And I was telling Lita the other night, I said, oh, there was a television show about pigs, I guess. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. I thought that was funny. And it reminded me of the 2 pigs we had at the home and how we had to try to kill them. And I'd take a sledgehammer and bang them on the head with it, trying to knock them out. And one of the hogs was, oh, he was tough. I think one of the board of directors had a rifle, and he finally came and shot the darn pig. Couldn't kill the rascal. And dressed him, and my job was clean out the chitlins to make sausage with, you know, and it made all kinds of sausage. And we had a great big kettle. It was I guess it was an iron kettle, and we kept the fire going underneath of it, and we just keep throwing scraps of this and that in it, and man, it was cholesterol heaven in there. And they called it Metzel soup. I don't know how they got that name, but that's what they called it.
What is Metzel soup?
That's what it was.
Well, Metz is a butcher in German, and it's probably like a butcher's soup.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, I see.
Metzger, they would call it Metzger soup.
Now, Fritz, how did you get to know the Christmans and their son George?
Well, see, after I left, is when they came to the home. And then I'd come up to see Bill, my brother. He was still at the home. And I'd visit with him on Sundays mainly and naturally. And they naturally invite me to dinner. And I'd say, I'm staying for dinner, aren't I? They were very nice about it. Christmas were very nice people.
They surely were. I remember them. I remember her. Like, if George and John, I believe I'm correct, wasn't that?
John was his other,
okay.
yeah.
John and George was her children. And she would be hovering them about something, and here would be 3 or 4 more, and she was a big lady, and she would be getting like this and getting all of those babies around her. I still remember that very vividly.
Yeah, she's very, they were a very nice couple.
And he was friendly, and he was, you know, the kids seemed to like him, the guys particularly, and he was always doing things with them.
Yeah, he set up the carpenter shop down in the basement to show the kids how to use tools and make things, and it was very
Was this
great.
after the war, or was this just before?
That was
1940, 41?
After?
that was
After.
before.
Yeah,
No,
because
it was
we were
after.
married.
Yeah, that was after.
After, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to go back to Gerda because I thought it was fascinating that you mentioned, but you didn't tell them about the big job she got or how she got it, but we didn't know that, did we?
Which job are you talking about?
Well, suddenly from heaven she appeared at our house or somewhere we met her. I don't recall this how, because we were both working, but she had gotten a delightful job down the White House, and she was a private secretary for one of the senators. And if I have to tell you this, she was one of the most gorgeous women I think I ever saw on 2 legs, and kept herself just absolutely perfect. There couldn't be a hair out of place, and I used to say, Gerda, what's the name of that one? And I mean, she was absolutely the most meticulous person I think I ever met. And all during this time, a stretch limousine would bring her home every night because she lived with us. And she was, well, she's an unusual person. She truly was. And I just couldn't see anything with Fritz about her at all. It was just entirely different. So suddenly, out of nowhere, came this visitor one afternoon at my house when the 2 children were small, Don and Sue. And I was there with them, and the doorbell rang, and I went to the door in Tacoma Park, is where we live. And it was a man from the FBI. And he was looking for Gerda, Gerda Hintze. And I said, well, geez, that's a good question. Why don't we have a talk? I said, why don't you tell me where she is? And he said, I didn't come to ask questions. I meant to be asked questions. I came to get some answers to questions. I said, I cannot feel that answer for you because I don't have it. I said, we have not seen her or heard of her in 25 years. And at that point, that's how long it was. And then he finally decided to break down and tell me that she had signed some very important checks down at the White House. And his belief was that we would not see her again because they had sent her overseas, making sure she did not return. Now that's what they told me. And so when Fritz got home from work, I told him what happened. And of course we saw nothing of her, never again. And about 13, 14, about 15, 16, 17, about almost 20 years ago, at Christmas time, we were sitting around the table playing Monopoly. And the telephone rang. And this young lady spoke and said, is this the Hintz's residence? And I said, yes, it is. And she said, well, is this Fred Hintze? And that's exactly what she called it. And I said, well, yes and no, this is Fritz Hintze. Oh, she said, that's who I'm looking for. And so she said, his sister wants to speak with him. So Gerda got on the phone and said hello, and she was going to send Fritz some pictures and told Fritz all about herself and said that she was doing very well, that she was working and that she had an apartment in Mexico, in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Santa Fe, yeah.
And she said that she and this one friend that she had there was, we were talking about their family at Christmas time, that they would like to get together with some of them, and she dared, the friend dared her to call and see if she could find Fritz. And so that was the first time we had heard from her, even though we had already thought she was already dead. We didn't think we'd ever see her again. And she did send the pictures, and she looked happy and was having a good time and was nice looking still, taking good care of herself. And we didn't see or hear any more about her. And one day we had visited up Pennsylvania with Fritz's brother Bill and his wife and children. He has 4 children. Is that right? 2 girls and 2 boys. And he said, you know, he thought he was going to try to locate her. And no one had seen her since that call or those pictures. That was it. And so he and his youngest son, Wayne, who's a sweetheart, they're real sweet children, he got in the van with his father, and off they go to Santa Fe.
Well, they actually went to California, though, and they came back.
And of course his van got robbed, and all his tapes and everything he had in there got stolen. But he found her through the Red Cross after he appeared. They helped him find her. And they visited, and they made arrangements for her to come east to visit with the family. Well, they were here for brunch in February 2 years ago. That's the first time we had seen her in...
More than 2, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. And first time we had seen her in over 50 years.
Isn't that something?
And I just want to tell you about her looks because it's so important to stress that. She, unlike Fritz's hair, which is not there, what little's there is white, hers is not gray and is still very beautiful. And she'd had all her teeth done. She said she'd spent a fortune on her mouth and got all her teeth done, and she was the most attractive elderly lady. She's now what?
74.
74, just a year older than I am. And the woman doesn't show her wear and tear at all.
And living alone and not
yeah.
having had children? Or
Yeah, she did.
She had
got
one
married to a Marine while we were all in Quantico. And that Marine, and she had a baby. And we took that child, Fritz and I. And I was working for an automobile company, and I took that little boy every morning with me to school with our son, Don. And when she found out everything's working fine here, then I don't need to worry about him anymore. And she just kind of dressed up herself and looked beautiful and went on her merry way. And I took care of the little boy. So One day, on a Saturday morning, I said, Gerda, you must face reality. I said, you have a child. And I said, this lady needs to get paid, and I've been paying her out of my paycheck. That's your problem, not mine. I didn't put him in that school. And she started giving it to me, and I gave it right back to her, and I said, okay, I'm going to give you just a certain period of time. If you don't have some place for him to go and yourself, then I'm going to call the Red Cross, and I'm going to register this child. And she didn't do anything. So we were keeping her also. And we only had a small place in Chevy Chase, and it was not really big enough for all of us.
So 1-bedroom apartment.
And she just, you know, acted like I wasn't speaking. And so when Jimmy was his name, darling, cutest little boy, and you've never loved anything on this earth like that child loved her. I have never seen anything. He would just hold on to her like he just couldn't let his mother go for a minute. And she would just do anything to keep him away from her. And so that was just so hurting. And I thought, well, gee whiz, you know, if we could afford it, I would just keep that child. But I couldn't. So I called the doctor. I didn't know who else to talk with, and I told him about this. And he said, have you thought about calling and checking to see where the father is? And I said, no, I hadn't thought about that, but I probably would come to it. And he said, well, try that. And I did. And the Red Cross found him in China. And he immediately, with his brand new wife, flew to America and picked up Jimmy. And we never saw him again. One afternoon up in Pennsylvania, about 15 years ago, I guess it's been now, Dorothy, Bill's wife, was watching TV and saw him on television. And
That's who, the little Jimmy? Or?
Yeah.
Little Jimmy.
Yeah.
And
He wasn't little anymore.
Oh, yeah.
no, he's a big man now. And he was a news reporter for in California. And she almost fell over, and she quickly got the station that he was on and called the television channel and got his number. And she called him, and he almost hung up on her. She said he was very rude to her, and I said, oh boy, I wish I could have got that call. I wish I could have gotten that call. But that was kind of the absenteeism of this whole togetherness that we also hope for. And I think if I ever saw him, I could make him understand, even though I realize he's had a different life than what he would have had with her. And only God can say what was best. And I really think that's what happened. I think he got what was best for him. Because apparently she just stepped right in and took him, because they didn't have any children at that time. And I don't even know where he went from here, because he was an officer at the time that Gerda married him. Or was he? No, he wasn't.
He was
I'm
a
sorry.
sergeant.
He was a master sergeant.
He was a
Yeah.
sergeant of some
But he
kind, I
made
don't
an
know.
officer before,
Probably.
by the time they left, or he left the United States. And we did not see Jimmy ever again, and she has never seen him to this day. And I made that really clear. That was the one thing, if she didn't do anything else while she was here, I wanted to know if she'd seen him since the time. And she said, no, never. And it was not like, it's important for us to discuss this. You know?
It's in general, in the orphan home setting, where you have siblings, your brothers and sisters, and other families, brothers and sisters, did the orphan home setting, in your opinion, bring them closer to each other because there was a lack of a regular parent, or apart, or neutral?
Some and some not. It depends on the individuals. Some of the brothers and sisters were not very close, and just like Gerda and myself, we were not close in the home. But
You were not close before either, I think you
no,
said.
but Bill and I were close, and like the Gerbers, they were very close. All three of the brothers were close. And this fellow I was just telling you about fell out of the tree. He was kind of a what you call bully type of kid, you know, and he didn't have any brothers or sisters in the home, and he was always picking on Charlie Gerber and Bill. They were Charlie and Bill were both the same age. Always picking on them, you know, and
Yeah, Bill
they'd
was-
come crying. Bill would come crying to me about Warren picking on him, and Charlie would come crying to Carl or Phil about him picking on him, and we'd have to get after him. And he was, like I say, a bully, and he just wasn't paying attention. So we had to have a little fight about it, and so I challenged him, or he challenged me. I don't know which it was. Anyway, we had a fight in the boiler room, and I beat the heck out of him, and that was the end of that. He didn't bother Bill anymore.
The uniform solution.
There was, and the same thing with on Charlie's side. Phil beat him up pretty bad.
Yeah. But you know, this Gerda thing.
But some of the other duties we had at home at that time, in the boiler room, we called it the boiler room, your furnace room, whatever you want to call it. We had two great big furnaces, coal furnaces, you know, and had a coal bin in there, and we shoveled coal in there to keep the fires going. And it was, we had, I can't remember who all was supposed to be on duty keeping those fires going in the wintertime. And in the laundry room was a small coal burner, and we had to keep that going because that heated the hot water also. And we had to make sure we banked it properly at nighttime so it wouldn't go out during the night, both of all the furnaces, because that's where it had radiator heat, you know, the hot water heat. Now Saturdays was bathing time. Everybody had to take a bath on Saturday. The girls were first because we only had one bathroom. We had had eight tubs and 3 showers.
Wow.
And
That was not one bath.
That's quite a bathroom.
That was a bath.
that was a large bathroom. And as I say, the girls were first, and then after they got through, then the boys all had to take their bath or shower, whatever they wanted to do. And one of the boys, I'm trying to remember which one it was. The name's on the tip of my tongue. He just loved to get in that bathtub and fill it all the way up with as hot a water as he could stand, and he would just love to soak in that, you know. He'd always
Can't
be the
blame him.
last one finished. But can't remember his name now. But that was our Saturday night thing, and we had to take a bath once a week. And in the summertime, you know, you can go in and take a shower when you wanted to. But
Did they have privacy stalls for each tub?
privacy
I
stuff.
mean,
What's
was
that? No, they had a rack inside the bathroom there with, you know, hooks on it, and you could hang your clothes or your bathrobe if you had one, and that was the privacy. Because it was right off the basement, it was a long hallway in the basement, that's where the bathroom was, and shower and bathing room.
Well, tell us, as the years moved then, after the war, what did you and Lita do, and what brought you back to the home as a board member?
Well, of course, you know Mr. Bill Grass. He found out about, you know, we were back here in D.C. area living, and somehow I got my name and started calling me. He did this about 5 years. He just wanted me to get on the board, and I would always give him some good excuse, you know. I was busy and this and that, and he finally got to the end of my rope, and I had to say okay, and that's how come I got on the board. Is Bill Grass got after me and finally got me on the board.
This was in the mid-1960s, approximately.
Yeah, approximately, yeah. Well, I was in the well, I guess before that period, I worked for the CIA for about 6 years, something like that.
I don't know.
So I
it's a
was
long time.
traveling a lot, you know, back down South America a lot. And so that was one of the excuses that I gave. But after I quit there, then those excuses ran out. But that's how I got on the board, was Bill Grass got after me.
You know, you talked about the Gerber boys and your friendship with them. Did you stay friends after you left the home?
Yeah, particularly Carl and I, because we were pretty much the same age. I don't know where Phil went.
I got killed.
Yeah, Phil got killed.
It was in the service.
I can't remember whether he was in the service at the time or what happened to him. But and then his younger brother Charlie moved to California. But Carl and I were pretty friendly, and in fact, it was Carl, myself, Phil, Fritz or Fred, and it seemed to me like there was one other boy. We would get together on like a Saturday night and go up to what they called the Hilltop Bar or whatever it was, atop of Good Hope Road at the time, and we'd stay and have some beers together and talk about the home and whatever, and we did that quite a bit, and we stayed friendly, until things moved apart. And Carl, for one reason or other, started smoking cigarettes, and it caused him to have lung cancer. So I went to visit him in the hospital, and he was telling me about it. He had put a voice box in his throat, and he was learning how to talk. And he said that the doctor had warned him a year previous to quit smoking, and he said, I took his advice too late. Anyway, he died shortly after, because it took him away. So that kind of ended that friendship. And then Fritz, he moved to Oregon or Washington or California, somewhere out there, and the other boys, like Carly. I called Carl even one time and tried to get back together, and he was not very receptive. I don't know. I don't think he wanted to fool with any of the kids from the home or have anything more to do with the home. That was the impression that I get when I talked to him, and so I didn't bother him anymore.
That was his brother?
Carl Edlin.
Oh.
But anyway, one of the reasons I called him, I wanted him to do some printing for me. He didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it.
Did you have a printing company?
Yeah, he owned a printing company.
He's the one person whom I called for the reunion who really wanted nothing to do with me.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And you say you're still living over in Potomac?
About 3 years ago, that's
Yeah.
when he was living in Potomac.
That's a shame.
He just has said his whole experience was so unhappy there that he wanted no memories, whatever.
Well, I didn't really feel that way myself. Because we always, like after the, well, see, he was there long before the Tapies came, and that was different. It was very different at that time. But the way I looked at it, we had a good place to sleep, and lots of good food, and the work didn't hurt us, and so I thought we made out pretty good in those times in the 30s.
The times you were there in the 30s were
It was the
pretty
30s.
tough
It was
times.
tough times.
That
yeah.
was a tough
yeah.
time. Bill remembers nicer things than Gritz does. His brother Bill. He's talked a lot about it, and he
Well,
said
that
it's a shame that he wasn't in the area, because he would love to serve and help, because the home had done so much for him. And of course he's retired now, and he spends all his time with his 2 grandchildren and their lovely family and church people.
Well, getting back to the February missile thing, whatever they called it, we made the sauerkraut. Yeah, we had a cutter, you cut the things of cabbage, and then we had 2 barrels, 2 big wooden barrels of sauerkraut, and you put a layer of shredded cabbage down, a layer of salt, and so forth until it got to the top, and then you we put a lid on it with some heavy rocks, you know, to keep
Yeah.
it. And then we'd sample it every day. But we made some good sauerkraut. It was great, you know.
Sampled it and headed for the outhouse.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of things, you have to stop and think about. Some of the memories you have at the home, and it's hard to remember all the things at one time. At one particular time, I just can't think of anything else at the moment.
Were you on the board at the time the decision was made to move to Upper Marlboro?
No, because when I first went on the board, they had already moved, and that's where they held their board meetings. They had that, when you come in the door where we come in at, right, that room right off the doorway there, that they met in there. And that's when I first got on board.
Okay, well, that'd be about 1967 then.
Yeah,
But-
approximately, yeah. Because they said they had just moved,
Yeah.
moved there, yeah.
But you were, okay, that was also the time from 67 to 72 when the home went through an awful lot of changes. Do you remember that?
Yeah. oh,
Tell
yeah,
us some
yeah.
about all those changes.
Well, I didn't really keep up with too much of the changes as such, because you had the different committees, and one committee was handling most of that stuff, and I didn't really get into it, to be honest with you. They kept talking. We kept talking about the problems we were having with the kids, and the expenses were getting out of hand, and money was running down, and that's when we got what little money we had and got it into the Lake Mason investment thing and worked it up. But then they were having problems with the getting orphans, because they were putting them in foster homes instead of in the orphan homes. So they finally started taking in the kids who were coming out of the court, where the judge would say, okay, you go to the home over here and behave yourself, and you won't have to serve time in jail. Drug addicts and things like that. And so we started having those kind of kids come into the home, and as soon as we got up to about maybe 22 to 24 or something like that, couldn't handle them anymore. They just got out of hand, and we had to always keep cutting them back, and it got to be too much of a hassle. So we had to stop that program, and that's when we started renting the hall out. And
But originally, it seems to me, as I've read, that one of the decisions that the board made in the very late 60s was the decision to allow this to become a part of, or to allow the state to begin to monitor the home, because the money factor, there wasn't very much money coming into the home anymore. They were using up the money because the parents were not paying, and what little they paid, it didn't amount to much, so that they agreed to come under state sponsorship in order to.
I don't know if it was state or whether it was just county, but
No, I think it was state,
statewide?
yeah,
I can't remember, to tell you
and
the truth.
the state had the ability to bring a stipend with each kid.
Yeah, right. That's
So the home was paid, which I guess made it attractive when you were
Well,
otherwise going broke.
for a while.
This is in late,
Yeah.
Right, this was
Well,
in
late 60s or
late
early
60s, early
70s.
70s.
Yeah.
And as I say, that they got so much problem with the kids that they were putting in there that we had to close that project down. It was just too much.
Well, that happened in 79.
Was
but
it that late?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's time
What was
late.
it, Kaufman or somebody called it Kinderheim, and that was just about the time I
Well,
was.
Kinderheim was the name that was there when I joined the board in 72. So it somehow
Yeah.
got
Well,
christened that
they
early.
tried to, yeah, they wanted to change it to children's homes.
It was
Sounds
the-
like
it was
Pete's
the-
mother.
Kinderheim.
It was the former Jesuit who was,
Yeah,
Who
but
was
his name
the
was
Oh, yeah,
what was his name?
I
Hoffman
forget.
or Hoffman, something like that.
Yeah,
Because I was on the board when he was
yeah.
there too.
I forget his name.
Kaufman, that sounds more like
I
it.
think it was Kaufman.
Yeah, yeah.
Kaufman.
Then we had the one that followed in, somewhere in the mid-70s. We had so much trouble with Bashinsky.
Yeah, well, you had me for a while.
And you
Then you
were
had
interim. We
Bashinsky.
couldn't talk Marge into
Yeah.
staying permanently. She had other things in mind, like children.
Other fish to fry.
And that really, the last director was Mike Stern.
And Mike Stern, who's now a member of the board. But Bashinsky was really the one that staffed the place, and we had some trouble with his staff, and that eventually
yeah.
started,
Remember that?
that started the start down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the staff problems.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else, Fritz, that you think of?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Well, how did you feel being at the German Orphan Home? Did you feel inferior or neutral, or did you
No,
feel have a
not-
better sense
not-
of camaraderie because you had a bunch of friends and buddies there?
Well, I guess that's one of the things that I think was good because, like we say, we had 25 boys there.
Mm.
You always had playmates, and we had baseball games. You always had something to do if we didn't have to work. You know, you had plenty of kids to play with and get-togethers, and at nighttime you could like play Monopoly or whatever we played. You know, we had a lot of things to do, and whereas if I'd been living in the home, you know, if you want to go see your friend, you got to go somewhere else to go see him. Whereas we were always together, and made a lot of friends in school. And like when I walked to school, to Eastern High School, I always get there early, and always a bunch of us, the kids, the boys, we'd get out on the football field and you know, play some football before time to go to class, or go in the basketball court and shoot some baskets and things like that. And yeah.
They'd invented both those games then?
Yeah.
How did they handle that for?
In fact, I got on the basketball team at Anacostia High School.
You did?
Yeah.
And so then you would stay, how would you get home? Just with the same streetcar?
What? Oh, from school?
Yeah, after the
I
games?
walked.
Always walked.
Oh, I didn't go to any football games as such.
No, I mean basketball.
No, we didn't go to any. I didn't go to any games. We just play ahead of time, except when I went to
Oh.
Anacostia. And then you know, it's just a short distance to walk home, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I made a lot of friends in school, and you're familiar with St. Elizabeth's Hospital. At that time, a Dr. Overholser was the superintendent there, and he had a daughter that, let's see, I think she was in Fritz's class. Fritz was the first graduating class from Anacostia, and I was in the second graduating class. And we were pretty good friends, and in fact, she invited me to go to the graduation ceremonies, dance and dinner, or wherever it was at that time. So I went with her. And she invited us to come up to St. Elizabeth's Hospital at one time. They were having a fashion show or something. They say, we have a fashion show, have a little dance afterwards or something. So Phil and I, when you come home from school, we had a clothes room. You had to change your clothes and put on your overalls. Now all the kids, they love wearing overalls. And you had to put your clothes, your school clothes, and it kept that locked, see. You couldn't get them out. Well, Phil and I, instead of putting our clothes in the clothes room, we'd stick them underneath our mattress. And then when we were supposed to go to bed at 9 o'clock, we'd put our clothes on, we'd climb down the fire escape, and off we'd go. Anyway,
Away, right?
we went. Dorothy Overholser invited us to this affair, and so Phil and I went, and we were over there, and we were there about, about 45 minutes or so like that. And who do you know? Where do you think come in the door?
We wouldn't know.
Tapey's daughter and Mrs. Tapey and her daughter's boyfriend. He was a policeman.
Oh, gee.
Oh Lord, we almost died. Anyway, he saw us and he came over and you know, wondering what we were doing. So he took us home and he said he wouldn't tell anybody. But I had another friend in high school. Curtis Diley was his name, and his parents gave him a car to drive. It was a Graham Page. I don't know if you remember the Graham Page or not. But he'd call up to home and ask if I could come out with him, say like go to a movie or something. And Tapey would always let me go. Curtis, of course, later on, after some years out of high school, he worked for, I think it was Riggs Bank. He was some kind of officer in the bank up there. So I met, you know, in school, it didn't bother me that I was at the home. In fact, I never made any bones about it. Everybody knew I was in the German orphan home. So they made me class secretary, I think it was. I beat out all the girls, and so
This is at Anacostia.
Anacostia, and the graduation exercises. I had to make a talk, you know, for the graduation, and our theme was what the heck was that? Had to do with the bull, you know, with the running of the bulls or something. What the heck it was? And I was also editor of the yearbook.
What year did you graduate?
February '39.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a long time ago.
Did people, other kids ask you, like, why were you in the home, or was that not asked much?
No,
They just accepted you as you were?
they accepted me just like I was.
Mhm.
Shoes and all.
Well, there's a number of people that I've run into over the years that went to Anacostia,
Yeah.
and they sort of were envious of the German orphan home children because they seem to always have friends, and they seem to be,
Yeah.
you know, they got along well, it appeared. And,
Yeah, I thought we did, and as I say, we made a lot of friends in school. And, I guess we were probably better off than a lot of the kids, you know.
I heard that too from people I talked to, that the
Mhm.
German orphan home kids certainly were not rich, but they had shoes, they had food, they had clothing, and they had friends.
Mhm.
Well, we didn't have a whole lot of clothing, but I think I had one suit.
Well, I guess there were kids in the Depression
But,
that didn't have that much.
But we had a seamstress up there, and she was a spinster, I guess you'd call it. She never got married, and we always kind of made it a little bit fun, but she didn't. I could take it that way, you know. The shirts got handed down from the older, all the way down, and she was the one who would, if the sleeves were too long, she'd tuck them up and sew a seam around them. That type of thing. But we had clothes, and weren't the best, but we made out.
Did this lady work part-time, or what?
It seemed to me like she was up there all the time.
Mhm.
And then we had a colored lady who was, what was named Hagen, and we all thought a whole lot of her. She was real nice. She was, I don't know what the heck what her job was. She was cleaning type thing, and kitchen and all, and we had a lady who was supposed to be a cook, and like you say, when Hoffman left, she kind of looked after things a little bit. Nobody paid much attention to her.
And you slept dormitory style, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You had to make your bed in the morning, and
Oh yeah, every morning you had to make your own bed, and It had to be done right, or you got chunked it behind the ear or something if you didn't.
And you went to bed at 9 or?
9 o'clock was bedtime.
Even, how about when you were like in high school?
Bedtime was 9 o'clock, period. There was no other time.
You can't operate a dormitory any other way.
It only works.
No, all the kids went to bed at 9 o'clock.
They turned the lights off on you, so you couldn't they'd have a way to switch the lights off, so it was just
Oh,
dark.
we better not put the lights back on.
Oh, you, okay.
And we'd all come up the one stairway, and boys and girls at the same time, and a couple of us stand halfway up the steps and kiss goodnight and things like that. You know, you have girlfriends and boyfriends.
When you ate, were they long tables? Did you have
We had
groups or
like 6 at a table, I think it was.
were you assigned a table, or could you just
Yeah,
sit where you
you were
wanted to?
assigned the tables. You know.
Did they rotate that so you with different
No,
kids?
no. And the food was put on the table in plates, and you helped yourself.
Mhm.
And you had to say a prayer, you know, stand behind your chair, and everybody would say the prayer. And God is great, and God is good, and you see how fast you could sit down and grab the bowl of food.
For 10 more grabbed it, huh?
Yeah, so
Did everyone go to the same church? I mean,
Yeah.
It was always the same,
same
whatever
church.
that
yeah.
church was.
And all went to the same Sunday school classes afterwards.
Mhm.
There's no difference in the church. But no, we had, as I say, the only problem we had was the fish on the food. And we just didn't like it. I mean, we would need it, in fact. So what we would do, we'd get some waxed paper and put it in our pocket, you know. And when Hoffman wasn't looking, we'd stick the fish in our pocket. And we had several cats out there, and they always liked Friday. But we had plenty of food, you know, and plenty of eggs, plenty of chicken. And when Tapey arrived there, we got a 5, I guess it was a 5-gallon ice cream maker that you turned by hand. And every Sunday we would make ice cream and have it for a Sunday afternoon. And we'd have to take turns turning the handle, because after it gets pretty hard, you could turn it maybe twice and the next guy would have to go.
Yeah, that's tougher than a butter churn.
Oh, much, yeah, a whole lot tougher. But we made good ice cream, and we really enjoyed that. So, I'll say, as far as the food was concerned, I don't have anything against that at all.
When you look back as early as you can, did they have refrigeration at all?
Oh yeah, we had the big refrigerators. You know, they were about 8 feet wide, I guess.
Mhm.
I think there was 2 of them, and they didn't put any locks on them. Now, like talking about Carl, he loved buttermilk for some reason or other, and we would sneak back downstairs after 9 o'clock, and he'd go in the refrigerator and get him a glass of buttermilk. I said, "Yeah, how do you drink that stuff?" One of the other things I remember, though, come to think of it, is when Hoffman was there. He was he made his own beer. He had a little stein and so forth, and he would have a beer. And he had this one room. He kept it locked, and he had a closet, and he kept it up on the upper shelf. All those rooms in the home over there had transoms. I don't know if you remember what transoms are. What we would do, we'd climb over the door through the transom into the room and get into his beer. And he'd have, you know, big stein about like that. We'd drink it maybe halfway down at the most, because we didn't want him to miss it, you know.
Somebody at your front door.
And he never missed it.
Mailman.
That's the mailman. Yeah. And so we would drink part of his beer, and he had never missed it.
He was smart enough to know when to stop.
Yeah, well, he never said anything about it, so, and he kept on making it, so I guess he figured he must have drank it himself. And,
That's good.
no, one of the times we were, they had the Labor or May Day things, but they always had, you know, all kinds of soft drinks and plenty of beer. And one time, Phil and I got a couple of bottles of beer, and we were back in the end of the hallway in the washroom, and we were having a few sips, you know, of the beer. And old Zimmerman, I don't know how he come walking back in, but he caught us. He dressed us down a little bit, but then we had to behave ourselves for the rest of the day.
The old May Day was the big party out
Oh
there, wasn't
gosh,
it?
we
Also
had
the
that
Labor Day
maypole.
party.
You know, had this concrete round, concreted, and a pole would stick up in the middle, and you had these ribbons, and we'd have to dance around the maypole. I thought that was the silliest thing I ever seen in my life. Well, I don't know what enjoyment the people got out of it, but I thought it was rather silly myself.
What else did they do on May Day?
Well, let's say we played our little instruments.
Yeah.
I played my mandolin. And I'm trying to remember the song. I told you about it the other day. What was that
I don't
song?
recall.
Anyway.
Was it a German song? Or?
No, just regular songs.
Because May 1st is a national holiday over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like their Labor Day.
Oh, yeah.
And so the maypole is a tradition over in Germany. So they obviously kept that as
So that's,
home.
yeah, that's where it came from.
Well, I even had it in my elementary school.
Did you?
Yeah.
I did too.
Really?
Yeah, May Day, and
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Dance around the maypole.
dance around the maypole, you'd wear white pants to school.
Yeah, we had
and,
certain clothes we were supposed to wear.
we didn't have any beer in elementary school.
Oh, you
But
didn't?
See the benefits of the home?
That's right. We had a lot of benefits.
Hidden.
Yeah.
Harry, where did you go to grade school?
I went to, initially to grade school over in Northeast Washington at Edmonds on probably 10th and D. And then later we moved over to Northwest Washington, and I went to Barnard Elementary at 4th and Decatur.
Which one had the maypole?
I remember it because I moved away from Edmonds when I was in kindergarten or first grade. Definitely over at Barnard.
Well, you know, when we were living on 15th and East Capitol Street, one of my Christmas presents was a pair of skates. Probably the only one I had, but present. I skated all over Washington, D.C. on those things because the traffic was hardly any at that time, back in the early 30s, you know, and yeah, it wasn't no problem skating down the middle of the street.
We even did that in the 40s.
Yeah.
When you felt safe.
Yeah, no problem at all. And when the skates wore out, one of the skates got broken or something, or they were wearing out, I put it on got me a 2x4 and put the skates one on each end and put a box on the front and used that. Skate roamed around. But I had a wagon there one time, and I'd go around collecting newspapers, get about 100 pounds of newspapers and take them down to 15th and Benning Road there. There was a scrap iron and scrap paper place, and you take them down and you get a nickel for 100 pounds.
It's just like in beginning of the war era?
That was in the early 30s.
Early 30s.
Yeah, that was when I was before I went in the home. Like 31, 32, something like that.
What did, at this May Day, what did the adults do that came, I mean, that attracted outside people, right? That was it free, or they had to pay admission to get there?
had dinner. They had dinner. It was
Bought
general
the dinners,
admission.
bought the beer.
Yeah,
We
bought
left
the
the money
dinners, bought
behind.
the beer.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then went home.
that's right.
So it's like a
Watch
That's what
fundraiser.
started the Oktoberfest
Yeah.
off.
Watch-
Yeah.
Watched us dance around the maypole and drank the beer, and then
Did
they
you
went
have to
home.
be German too?
The
Go to their
ladies,
home?
no. The ladies, in fact, I was the only one that was born. Gerda and I were the only one in the home that was actually born in Germany. But the ladies' society, they would bring different things that either made or bought or whatever to sell, you know, gadgets or whatever you call them. I don't know what. And they'd sell that stuff, and they would use their money to buy things for the kids, like baseball gloves and things like that. So we could have they bought some, balls and bats, and we played baseball out there.
So that was some of the work of the Happiness Club.
Yeah, Happiness Club, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You say there were no other kids there that were born in Germany, but
we were
were
the
there
only one.
many kids there that were German descent?
Well, the Horrocks, they were German descent, and I really don't remember any others that were, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
There was, that wasn't the idea that you had to be German to go into the home.
Pre-war Europe, other than England, was certainly not homogeneous, but Hungarians got into the home, and Romanians,
Irish,
and
Mm-hmm.
Irish.
All
so
kinds.
forth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All
So
kinds.
it was a community of the world,
Yeah.
really, of the kids that came together.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them were from parents. They were already living in the United States at the time.
Now you mentioned that your mom, you visited your mom most weekends.
Oh yeah.
Did she come to the home, or did you go to where
Once
she
in a
lived?
great while, she'd come up to the home.
But you went to her house. How'd you
Yeah.
get there?
I had a car. I bought a car.
Well, how about before you had a car?
Then I didn't go. There was no way to get out there.
How about the other kids? Did their parents or parent visit them?
Well, like the Gerber kids, his father was, an ex-soldier. He lived in the soldier's home, and he'd come up there once in a while and visit with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what year he died, but I can't remember if he died before I went into service or afterwards or what.
When the parent came to visit you at the home or visit the kids, did they eat with you?
No.
And they would normally visit, what, on Sundays or Saturdays?
It was mostly Sundays, yeah.
Mhm.
In fact, that's the only time I remember they coming up there was Sunday afternoons,
Mhm.
and stay a couple hours. And
Mhm.
you hope to get a nickel or a dime or something from them.
Mhm.
Because once a year they would take us out to Glen Echo. And of course, if you didn't have any money, all you do is walk around. But if you had a little bit of money you saved for the year, you could ride on some of the things like the Dodging cars and various.
Did they ever take you to like a baseball game at Gritz Stadium?
No,
You never recall doing that?
no.
Mm-hmm. How about like is it Uline?
Uline
Uline Arena.
Yeah.
You go to that?
No,
Mm-hmm.
no. They never took us to any games.
How about going down to the museums in D.C.?
No, we never went to anything like that. The only trips that we went on was the Glen Echo, and I can't remember who sponsored that, whether the Happiness Club.
Happiness
I
Club.
think it was the Happiness Club that sponsored that.
Mm-hmm.
You could go out there on the old open streetcar.
I think that's the way we went.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we remember the streetcars. And that's about it as far as I can remember things at the home at the moment. Can't think of anything else.
Well, Fritz, thanks very much. And Leda, thank you for filling in the real details.
Well,
Yeah.
after all, I've been here 54 years
Yeah.
in this family now, so
Yeah.
you hear a few things
Yeah.
and remember.
Well, I
The
don't suppose you're interested in what happened to me afterwards. The jobs I had. I didn't really go into that.
We're really trying, at this point, just focusing on the home relationships, and you've given us some real invaluable information, Fritz, but the file's always open. If you think of anything else, be happy to come back and get that and record it for you.
I think this is a very important point. I refer to this again 3 times now about Gerda. What she said in my presence when we saw her was the biggest mistake that I've ever made in my life was separation from my family. I thought that was terribly important.
Now, she was the youngest. She was young. How old was she?
She's a year younger than I am.
Just a year younger,
Yeah.
and she had that different
She
experience.
was 11
Yeah.
years old.
Interesting.
Yeah, she was.
But she does not have the same vivid
But
outlook that he
we've
has.
talked on the phone a couple
Exactly.
times, and she's changed, you know, from what she was.
Look, we're through with the home, but for the purposes of Fritz's own history,
Oh, yeah.
why don't we go on? We've got 15 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
And go on and
Um,
continue with the rest of your life. Anything you'd like to say for your
Well,
grandkids or
just,
children? or
just
whatever?
the fact that after getting out of the Marine Corps, they tried their best to get me to stay in, but Lita was not a service-oriented type of wife. She didn't like the slop shoot. What we call the slop shoot was the beer. You know, you go to the.
I still don't.
Yeah.
I think it's unnecessary.
So anyway, they tried their best to get me in the audit division of the Marine Corps, and they wanted to give me a commission. And she didn't want to stay in the Marine Corps, so I said, well, I'll have to pass this up. Thanks anyway. And I wouldn't get any reserves, thank goodness, because I would have been in Korea,
Oh.
where Brady, he signed up after he got out of the Army. He went to the reserves, and off he went to Korea. He and I are the same age, I think, pretty much.
I don't know who that is, my love.
That's her sister's husband down in Jackson, Mississippi, where they live. But after I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't know what to do, you know, as far as getting a job. So I went back to the bank, but there was nothing there to get. So I finally took a job with the fellow who was in the Marine Corps with me overseas, in fact. He was manager of the Garwood Industries branch here in D.C. down at Wisconsin and K in Georgetown. And so he wanted me to come work with him. So I worked there about 5 years, I guess. And then I briefly worked for the Chevrolet dealer in Bethesda for just a few months or so. And then I was going to take a job in, oh gosh, what's that fellow's name? The builder, Jewish fella with his sons.
Cohen.
Cohen, was that his name?
Mm-hmm.
So I got to know the fellow who was doing the accounting for him, and he said they were looking for a CPA to help them out. So, okay, well, I'll come and talk. So I talked with Mr. Cohen, and he wanted me to come to work for him. So I got into what was going on there, and so we had a discussion one day as to what, how he wanted his financial statements, you know, the preparation of them, what they looked like and all. And I tried to explain to him how financial statements are set up and how you figure it out and what this means and that means. And he wouldn't have none of it. He said, this is the way I like it, which is nothing, you know. He says, it's the way I got this business started from owning a dump truck, and they said, that's the way I'm going to do it. I said, okay, but I says, I mean, you don't need me for that. I said, what's his name? I couldn't remember his name, the accountant. Oh, he blessed that guy out. Every time he was a terrible guy. He cussed at his kids and all. They fought all the time. He started to do that with me one time. I said, hold it, buddy. I said, you won't start cussing me, I'm going right out the door. You won't see me anymore. And so he didn't say anything more to me about it. But we had a little, I stayed there, I don't know, about 3 or 4 months or whatever it was. And I said, okay, since you don't really need me anymore, I said, but there's one problem you got here. I says, you've got a lot of partnerships. God, you must have had 25 of them. I said, and the tax returns haven't been filed. And I says, I found out that the CPA who was supposed to be doing it has been sick and he can't do it. I says, I'll stay long enough and get all these things done, and then, you know, we'll shake hands and goodbye. That's what we did. Then I went to work for Stone Straw Corporation as an accountant there. I worked there 11 years. Yeah, 11 years.
You were
And
in charge of the accounting department.
no, what's his name was in charge of the accounting
Well,
department.
he was
made
for a while.
assistant treasurer, but later on they opened up the division in Branchville in College Park. Our factory was down in what was that? Franklin Street.
Franklin Street Northeast.
9th and Franklin Street Northeast, right there by the railroad tracks, and they made paper tubing and stone straws. Then they opened up two divisions out in Branchville and made what they call stonized paper tube. It's impregnated tubing that used in automobiles and things like that. And then this stupid inventor came in and he wanted to start up a railroad engine filters that you put in railroad engines, you know, great big things, you know. So he started that up. And so this guy Wallach was the CPA in charge of everything. So he wanted me to come over and in the office in Branchville and run that office over there and set up cost accounting systems and so forth. So I went over there, but he didn't want to increase my salary very much. And I remember the factory manager over there, Bill Mulvey. He and I were pretty good buddies. We played some golf together. So we got along real well. And old Bill Mulvey would come into Wallach's office. He would have his office over there, and he'd bang on the desk, and Wallach would jump up. Oh, I wasn't sleeping, you'd say. But anyway, to make a long story short, he wouldn't give me a raise that I was satisfied with, so I told him I was leaving. I said, I'd give you 2 weeks' notice. And just before the 2 weeks ended, he wanted to give me a big raise, and I said, no. I said, you didn't want to give me a raise when I wanted it, and I said, no, I don't want it. I said, I'm leaving. I had gotten a job at the CIA. And that's when I was down in South America an awful lot, back and forth. And I was made an officer in about 6 different companies that they had around Washington, and because they had to have officers for each company, you know, so they could register them. And it looked like it was a regular business type thing. But we did have a couple of accounts, really. One of them was the church that, I don't know if it's still the same one or not, across the street from the White House. What's the name of that square in front of the White House?
Square.
Lafayette, huh? Is it Lafayette Square?
St. John Church there, you mean?
St. John's Church, right.
Yeah.
Well, I had that account, did their accounting for them. And they didn't know anything about our connection, you know. But we had a number of projects down in South America and Chile and Colombia. What we did, we worked under the AID program, supposedly building low-cost housing. And then they would place an agent down in as a manager of the office or whatever. And my job was to go down there and make sure the bookkeeping and accounting was done properly. And in Bogota, we went into a partnership with a builder there. And I had to sign a lot of papers, and I was some kind, I don't know what the heck it was now. But when I finally left, and I had to go back down there and sign off all these papers when we disintegrated our partnership with the guy. But it was fun.
When did you and Lita start the real estate business?
Together?
You had your CPA firm
Yeah.
in Bethesda.
Uh-huh.
Well, that was under the CIA, though.
Well, yeah, I don't know anything about it.
They set me up as a CPA firm, and it's also in Bethesda at the time.
I didn't know what kind of game he was playing.
And
He was over there.
when did you start this?
I've been in real estate 31 years. And I'm still in it.
When she decided that she was going to go into business for herself with a partner, and what was his name? Roger?
Yeah.
Joe Rogers?
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
set up the
Jimmy Rogers or Joe?
Joe Rogers.
Joe Rogers.
Joe Rogers, not Jimmy.
I set up the partnership documents and all for him, and took care of whatever books they had, and wrote it pretty good because he was only working part-time. So I wrote it, whoever made the deals, they're the ones that got paid. The other guy didn't get anything. So his wife got a little bit upset at that, and the partnership busted, and she and I went and got my license, and we went into business together. What was it, 70 or 71 or something like
I don't know what year that was. I just know where we were. We were there 19 years in that high-rise building on the corner here of Pine Way and US 1.
Yeah.
And then we bought, remember your wife's property that
Right.
I sold that unit, and then I bought one of those units, and then I lost it. I sold it to a man and held the first trust, and he refused to pay us.
Well, he started bouncing the checks, and
Giving bad checks.
we foreclosed.
Nigerian.
We foreclosed him, and he decided he was going to sue us for what, $300,000, and
Took about 7 years to
it
get it
took a long
before.
time to finally get it dismissed in court.
3 different times he tried everything in the books to renew it, and
He
the
finally
judge
got
just
it
laid it
down.
on him.
He finally got it down to $25,000.
The judge got it down to nothing.
In fact, the judge got a judgment against him
Yes, he
to pay
sure
us
did.
$3,000, and he
And
hadn't
part
paid
of
us
our
either.
lawyer's cost,
Yeah.
and that did it. That took care of him.
Um,
But he, unusual person. First time I really ever dealt with one, and all the people I've dealt with, can you imagine? And then I get hooked into something like that.
Well, that was when I had a heart attack,
Yeah.
and I had passed out on the kitchen floor here one morning when I was getting ready to get some breakfast, just keeled over, and
Had
got
a
up
heart
about
attack.
10 seconds later, and didn't feel anything, and didn't feel like there was any problem. Anyway, we finally went on down to the Washington Hospital, and they kept me there for 3.5 days, doing all kinds of tests, and couldn't find anything wrong. So they finally let me go. And 30 days later, exactly, keeled over again. And I was with, what's his name, at a lumber company to pick up some sheetrock, and I was standing there waiting for the other guy to finish their load so we could load up his pickup, and I fell flat on my back on the bunch of sheetrock. Got up and came on home and lay down on the couch for a while. I said, well, I don't know what the problem is, but and I said, I feel all right, went on to work. 30 days later, same thing happened again. Only this time, I was in a seminar with the real estate board of realtors, and we had halfway through, and I went over to, I said, gee, I talked to the guy next to him. I said, I'm awful thirsty, and I don't drink Cokes or anything like that. So I'm going over and get a Coke just to have something to drink. Came back, and you're getting ready to sit down, and I said, here, grab this quick, I'm going to faint. I felt it coming on this time. So they came over and wanted to know how I was, and I said, well, I'm all right. I didn't really pass out, but I said, let's wait till it's over and see how it goes. So at the end of the seminar, I felt it coming on real bad, and I said, you better call the wagon. And I went to the doctor's hospital, and they found out exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm.
The electricity in my heart had turned off.
I met him at
So
the
they-
door. And
So they put a pacemaker in right away, and a temporary one, and then put in a permanent one.
that doctor was so funny. He said, oh, miss, let me get on my bending knees in front of you. This is when doctors should listen to their patient. And he's Indian, and all that stuff is in garbage. Because I told him what to do. I said, the moment that delivery wagon drives up there, I said, you have somebody put a heart monitor on his chest. Who are you? Where'd you come from? Don't you come in this hospital telling me what to do. I said, I said it and you do it. And he grabbed this nurse, and she, poor thing, didn't even know what was going on. And so she had a lien on him by the time they put him on.
And I passed out a couple times there, right
But
there in the emergency
They
room.
caught it.
And
That was
they
what we
found
were
it.
after. We were trying to find out just what is this, and there it was. And it hadn't been for that thing.
I was trying to get rewired for
Yeah.
220 and it didn't work.
But that was bad. So that's what steered me into making a bad move on my office. I'm trying to apologize for the mistake, but there'll never be a good enough apology for what I
And
did.
in November of '94, I had a different heart attack. The arteries were all clogged up from all that great hamburger foods and so forth.
All that stuff.
Yeah, all that bad junk food I'd been eating, and
Good German food.
had that angioplasty done, which I wished I hadn't had it done, but it did. But
Well, you didn't have a choice,
I went
did
in
you?
after, yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Fritz, we got just about 1 minute left. You
So-
skipped from the Marines, and all of a sudden you're a CPA. Where'd you go to school? How
Oh, I
did you
went
do
to
that?
Ben Franklin, I'm sorry. I went to
Uh-huh.
Ben Franklin at night and got a degree, bachelor's degree, and then went back a few years later or so to get a master's degree so I could sit for the CPA exam because I didn't have very much math. And I had to take an examination in Baltimore for math exam. And the things that I didn't understand, I just skipped over them real quick because it had so many questions. So I passed that with flying colors, no problem at all. The math part. It was the CPA part that was tough. It took me 3 times before I got
Our
it.
exam.
Oh, that was tough.
Well, Pete, are you winding down? Give him thanks.
Thank you very much, Fritz.
Well, thank
in your
you
native
all.
language, Dankeschön.
Yeah, well, Dankeschön to you and for coming over and